Welcome back. It's Krista Living Sober, and we have Elsie from Elsie's Recovery to talk about a 22-year drug addiction, sobriety, how he helps guide addicts struggling in addictions, people who are already in recovery, and anyone else who is sober curious find their way to sobriety and motivates them to continue staying sober.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to
Yeah.
be here with you. It's great.
I'm happy to have you on my podcast. Would you like to start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Lona. I go by LC. I am a sober trans man in the world of just trying to help other people understand that there's another option. Like you said in the beginning, I spent 22 years addicted, deeply addicted to drugs and alcohol and behaviors that were just dangerous. It was less for the high and more for the escape, to be able to escape myself. Knowing that you are not in the right body from like the age of 4 whenever we first start learning about gender, and that's when I realized that something was wrong with me. And then from there, experiencing a lot of deep childhood trauma, I was just really I really couldn't understand what I was doing. Like, I really believed that I was God's little joke, and that's what I believed myself to be. And I just didn't know there was another option. I didn't know that underneath all of that, that I could choose happiness, and that it was available, and that it lived inside of me. And
Yeah.
so that's where and all that did take me to the brink of death, and all that did take me to that beautiful space of rock bottom. And now 8 years in recovery, 3 years into gender transition, I'm at home in myself, and happy to be a part of the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was your drug of choice? Or did
Well,
you
my
kind of like mix?
yeah, but my biggest downfall was opiates. Of course, started with pain medications, and then heroin pretty quickly. So that was the one that gave me, though I tried everything, and I always am able to tell people that I can kind of understand how you feel or what your addiction was like, because I had a spiel of addiction with everything from the meth and alcohol and cocaine, and so, but it was the opiates that finally gave me that feeling of just everything's okay for this
So,
moment.
yeah.
Everything's okay.
So you preferred like the downers, like the kind of, I don't know how to
Yeah,
describe it because I was
I
more like an alcohol upper person, but
yeah, and that was the surprising thing for me when I
yeah.
developed a heavy cocaine addictions, because that was
Yeah.
my addict, like, excuse, I guess. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, well, this is okay for me to do because it's not my drug of choice. So truly, I'm staying
Right.
clean from my drug of choice. And then I quickly found myself in an absolute down and out addiction to cocaine. And I thought, now I can't really say, that I'm a downer person or an upper, but I used to believe
Right.
that I was a downer, like I hated uppers. I was like, what's wrong with people? I don't want to be up like that. And then I got there. And so, but I feel now, that I have a place of awareness in my life, that I can look back over that and realize that instead of being God's little joke, it was a mission for understanding. So, like, I had to touch everything so that I could be able to touch everyone that
Oh, I love
needed to
that.
be touching,
Yeah.
and so I, I don't regret 1 second of it.
No
It's amazing.
regrets.
Yes, none.
Lessons. How long have you been sober?
I've been sober now for 8 years. I would call myself being in recovery for 9 years, but I've been, completely without illegal substance for 8 years. The My first year in recovery was like, I think a lot of people's, it came with a lot of slips and falls. I was steady working on myself in a positive aspect. I was working through my trauma. I was in an outpatient program, and there were just some things that got to me, and they were more overwhelming than my new coping skills were able to handle. And I had a couple trip ups, and I remember on April 18th of 2013, I was um, I was getting ready to roll a blunt, and I had gotten myself out of control with weed. My wife had been in a 2-year heroin relapse. We had just had to admit her to a mental institution. It was just me and my son, which was, my stepson. It was just me and him. He was a teenager. I was $10 weed to death. And it was on that moment that I realized, wait a second. So, like, he's going through all this stuff. His mom's not here. He doesn't know what's going to happen. I'm gonna $10 us to death. So it's like I had this conversation with him in my head while I had that, dime bag of weed laying out on the plate, getting ready, that I was just telling him, okay, look, man, I tried my best. I really did. And I do love you. This has nothing to do with you, but I'm just not strong enough to do this. And we're going to be able to stay here in this house probably for about 3 months. That'll be as long as, till they kick us out. And then you're going to go live with, whoever. But I gave it my best. And that was I didn't have that conversation with him. I had that in my head, and it was so real that I looked down at that weed and I was like, this just isn't worth it to me. And I don't want people to get mad at that and say, start screaming about weed. Weed's not the problem.
Yeah.
Weed wasn't the problem.
Right.
I was the problem. I was
Mhm.
the one with the addiction. I was the one that could take anything in those moments to escape.
Mhm.
And that just happened to be what was there and what was available and what did it for me. So
Right.
I have no issues with weed and that being a part of people's recovery. I think however you recover, that's beautiful for you and I
Right.
support it. But for
Mhm.
me in that time, I I could not do that in that time, and it wasn't acceptable like that either in those times. So the outpatient
Yeah.
program wasn't going to let me keep doing it, and but that was the moment that I turned it around and just said I got to do something completely different. And I realized that I could feel my feelings and not,
Yeah.
like not fall apart
Yeah.
like I thought.
Yeah. It's tough at first, but
It is.
ooh, feelings.
It's bad, it's bad. Isn't it like they were just waiting behind the curtain of
Yeah.
your escape and,
Oh.
bringing their friends in, so as soon
Oh,
as you got
yeah. All
sober,
of
it
the
was like
feelings. And it was
yeah,
just like, yeah, a bomb went off and all the
yeah,
feelings appeared. And it was a
yes,
mess to like
yes.
clean up every part of
Oh,
that.
yes, my god, it's
Oh my
terrible.
goodness.
It is,
Yeah.
it is.
But it's a beautiful thing when you can actually like in
Yes.
time live with those feelings and not have to escape them.
Yeah, it really is, and I think that
Mhm.
it really just comes down to practicing. If we
Yeah.
think back to our beginnings of our addiction, we didn't learn how to use every time we felt something. It was like we had to start learning to use and
Yeah.
coping in that way. And it was an adjustment. Mind you, not a as hard of maybe as of an adjustment as it is trying to reverse that.
Mhm.
But, if we start going through it and we surround ourselves with, amazing resources, because that was one of the things I had to do. I had to
Mhm.
study myself. I had to know what I needed, and I went out and I got it. And and never mind whoever's listening, like never mind
Mhm.
those excuses that your head gives you. I don't have money, I don't have insurance, there's no resources around
Yeah.
me, because I had none of that stuff. I had no
Mhm.
money, no possible thought of resources. I had no insurance.
Mhm.
I had all the excuses,
Oh yeah.
but I had to make something bigger than me. And in the beginning, of course, it's
Mhm.
not necessarily going to be you, but
Right.
find the one thing that is bigger than you. And don't let anybody make you feel bad because their one thing, my one thing was my son.
Yeah.
I don't care if you've got 7 children and you love them all. If that's not your one thing, that's all right. But find your one thing, that thing that keeps you moving through, you
Right.
know?
Yeah,
And
excuses are so hard to fall into.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
tricky trap.
it is. It is because they make sense because they're true.
Yeah.
You know what I
I mean, and
mean?
it's like a comfort thing, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
You have to it's like a pity thing. You're like,
sure,
you know, I'm gonna make
sure.
excuses so I can get out of this when, all these resources and whatever helped us and what's the word? Options, availability, all
Mm-hmm.
that was there, but, we were blinded. We
Yeah,
couldn't see that.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, you definitely have to be in a space, I think. I think that's why rock bottom is such an amazing place to be. And it
Yeah.
sounds like an oxymoron to say that rock bottom is your most beautiful place, but it
Right.
really is because when you get to that space, it's like you've played all the excuses out and you're either you- you're you're desperate for something like something's got to give, and that moment that you realize that nobody's coming to save you and like nobody's showing up to make this better, and there's no magic pill, and if there was we would take it to the limit and find a way to abuse
Right.
it anyway. So that
Yeah.
moment where you just say, I gotta make a
Yeah. I've
change.
had enough.
Yeah, just had
Mhm.
enough of this is a
Yeah,
beautiful, glorious moment.
it is. So how I know you mentioned part of that, but how was your childhood or family dynamic growing up?
Oh, terrible.
Yeah.
Just terrible. I'm an old guy, so I was born to teenage parents that were
Mm,
not in love. They just, my mom was making her boyfriend jealous with this other guy she knew from high school, and then the next thing you know, she's got pregnant. And in southern Alabama, which is where we're from, in 1974, the adage was, well, y'all have to get married now. And my mother's mom had said to her that she was either going to have an abortion or she was going to have to give me up for adoption. And my grandfather fought that and said, no, that's not happening. So, I had a teenage mom who was 17 when I was born, trying to play house with a guy she barely knew, trying to outrun her parents who were then always wanting to take her baby from her. And she was a young girl with her own trauma issues and abandonment issues. So she married a lot of men because her family had made her think as a woman, you can't do this without a man. And so that was her belief system. And therefore, we went through a lot of monstrous men. So I suffered through sexual abuse that started when I was 5 and went until I was 11. A lot of physical and mental trauma in that, watching my mom being beaten and almost killed and being very afraid all the time of that.
mm,
I learned very quickly to read the room, and I knew by counting the beers that this
mm.
man drank of what kind of night we were going to have.
Wow.
So, I'm 5, 6, and 7 years
Right.
old, and I'm counting the beers. He used to put the
Wow.
back then we had the peel off caps and he'd drop it
Okay.
down in the can. And when he wanted another one, he would jingle the can, and that meant somebody better get up and go get
Oh,
him one.
wow. Yeah.
And so I would count the jingles. So if I was in
Yeah.
another room, I knew how many constantly.
Wow.
And so I
Wow. It's like
always,
you were conditioned
yes,
until
yes, very much so,
yeah.
very much so.
That's crazy.
And so that went on, and then when my mom finally left him, we went through a very she stayed single a very short while, because he had lots of mental problems and was stalking us and leaving bullets in the, it
Mhm.
was really awful. And then she married another man who was so mentally and physically abusive to me and especially my little sister, who was 6 years younger than me, that I got to a place where, I was dealing with and not forgetting, like, all this whole time I'm carrying this
Yeah.
secret within me that, my I'm a boy and my body is beginning to like morph out on me, like I'm
Yeah.
morphing into this female. And that the one thing I hated about the abuse so much was that it made me, I couldn't be a boy if he was
Mm.
doing this to me? Like, your
Yeah.
child mind rationalizes things.
Mhm.
And so it just really conditioned me to be very unforgiving of my feminine self. Very hate. It's like I had this standoff, this hate relationship within myself going on. And I think because of what I watched my mom go through, knowing that she was so smart and hardworking, and always watching her have to be overrun by a man, and then what was happening to me, I just, femininity to me was weak.
Mm.
And I couldn't let that be known. I didn't want to let that be seen in me either, because it
Right.
made me vulnerable. And so the whole time, I'm going through this, just being locked up in this body. So, my growing up was just a mix of,
Oh,
yeah, just a mix of
that's
trauma.
I mean, that's a lot. Yeah. Abuse, mental, physical. You had the secret and then like the hating,
Yeah.
loving, hating yourself, and then you
Yes.
feel stuck, and that's a lot
It
for
was.
a child.
It was. I
You
began
don't know.
self-mutilating when I was 14,
Yeah.
and that was that release, because I didn't have anybody to
Mhm.
talk to, so I wasn't saying
Mhm.
anything about this stuff. I was
Yeah.
holding it all in, and it was like it was just bottled up. And I would say that was
Mhm.
probably one of my first escapes of
Yeah.
of like, because when that
Yeah.
happens, when you do that, you release that,
Yep.
then it sends out these endorphins and all these dopamine and serotonin within you. People say, oh, doesn't it
Mhm.
hurt? And I'm like, well,
No.
yeah, I mean, it hurt in a
But
way, but it
mhm.
was better than the heart hurt. This
Right.
was a hurt that it was almost like, as you
Mhm.
watch your skin open up, it's like it
Yeah.
releases all that
Mhm.
you're holding. And so I would say that was probably like one of my first big
Mhm.
escapes from that.
Yeah, I went
So,
through that. I
did
used to
you?
like cut
God
myself and
love you.
scratch myself. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was just weird, but
No, I
any type of
understand.
pain.
Yes,
And then
any
like
type.
I would like throw up and I don't know. It
Yeah.
just stupid escaping things like that
Yeah.
that we didn't understand when we were younger, but that's how
No.
we first escaped, I think. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
survivors, and we were just
Yeah.
figuring out how to survive
Mhm.
and live in
Yeah.
our skin at that
And
time.
it's so hard as a child, because
Mm.
I did get adopted and I did struggle with abandonment issues and like
Mm.
living with an adopted white older family and hating loving myself and trying to figure out where I fit in the world, you
Wow.
know. And then I
Yeah.
found the alcohol at age 12. Did
Wow.
you start using around that young of
11.
an age? 11.
Yep.
Okay.
I found alcohol at 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that can become so dangerous. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes, because your brain's not developed. And,
Yeah.
you think about an 11,
Mm,
12-year-old kid
mhm.
finding the secret of alcohol.
Ugh.
And it's so hard at that young when you flip that switch to
Yeah,
then flip the switch back off,
right.
especially when we live in a society that is so many times built around drinking.
Yeah.
And you see people around you and
Mm,
families that are partaking of this, and they make it look fun, but for
yeah,
you it's a whole different.
right.
Like, I remember being at parties with my friends, in high school, and everybody's drinking, and I'm looking around at them, and they're all having fun, and I realize for me this is a whole different thing. Like, for me, I'm trying to
Yeah,
drown out,
yeah.
massive feelings. This isn't just fun, this is survival.
Mhm. Yeah,
I would, I
that's so true.
it is.
I
It
thought I was
is.
doing what everyone else was doing
Right.
until by age, like, 15, I'm in and out of courts because
Yeah.
I'm having issues with my emotions, mostly, like, anger and
Mm.
whatever it is I was trying to escape, and then ending up in and out of court, getting arrested, like, what? Like, at
Yeah.
15 and no one else is having the issues. Me, I'm not
Yeah.
normal.
Yes, yes. You're
But
speaking
that
their
didn't stop
language.
me. Yeah.
No, oh gosh, no. No, because the switch was flipped. It was like, regardless, it was almost like that feeling of, you can't do anything to me that I'm not already going through within myself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can arrest me. I was being locked up in
Mhm.
psychiatric
Yeah.
group homes and facilities and all of this
Mhm.
stuff at that same age. And you're like, what else? Like, you can't
Yeah.
match the pain I feel inside or the
Mhm.
hatred.
Yeah.
And then, not to mention that when you lose control, it's like the people around you then switch into that shame place.
Ugh,
It's like,
yeah.
What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
That you lost control and couldn't handle this. It,
Right.
it's a vicious
They don't
cycle.
understand.
No,
If you're not an addict, you don't understand. And
no.
I don't understand them. I don't understand how people can binge drink on a weekend and then
Oh my
everything's
gosh.
fine. Like,
Right.
what?
Right.
I wish I could have done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Me
god.
too.
No.
Me too. I wish.
Yeah. So then you do think you became dependent right away, or did it
Oh,
take some
sure.
time?
No, I knew that first
Yeah.
time I drank the alcohol, I was like, "Oh," like,
Mhm.
this is exactly what I needed, and I knew that moment.
Yeah.
I did this podcast show with a great lady named Beth I'd love to connect you with,
Yeah, of course.
and she has a podcast called the Safe Home Podcast, and she is the parent to her son whom they adopted, and he was, I think, from China, and they adopted him when he was born. And he's going through, he's only 18 now, and he's going through the
Yeah.
same things. And
Wow.
we were talking about that very thing, and it was the same thing that I told her, like, the moment that I tried this stuff called Rush, and this is an old
Mm.
timer's drug, but it was an inhalant that
Okay.
was back in, the 70s and
Yeah.
80s. They sold it under VCR head cleaner. That was how they could sell it
Oh,
legally. But
okay.
it came in a little bottle and you just sniffed it and it gave you
Mhm.
this crazy whirl head, and it was awful,
Mhm.
awful. But I remember, between the alcohol and that stuff, I was
Yeah.
already a fiend. I remember following that
Mhm.
one kid around that had given me that rush, and I
Yeah.
was like, I gotta get some more of that. Where can I get some more? Like, I'm
Right.
12 years old. Like,
Isn't that crazy how that works? I
it's
That just brought back
amazing.
memories of me and my friends stealing dust cleaner for, like, computers, and we
Right?
would inhale that because of that rush feeling. Crazy.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
what?
And it's
Yeah.
really a disgusting feeling, isn't
Oh,
it? Like, it feels so
yeah, like, I
terrible.
needed to lose more brain cells,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Right. But it's
Mhm.
terrible. Like, I just felt like, I think of that movie Friday and that character Felicia all the time, and
Mhm.
I felt like her over that a rush and alcohol, and
Yeah.
it was amazing
Mhm.
the way, because a child doesn't have a moderation. You don't come with
Mhm.
a moderation gear within you naturally. Like, that's something that's
Right.
learned and taught by your family, and
Mhm.
like, so I bypassed that
But
switch.
then when you're not taught that, you're, like,
Yep.
kinda off the leash
Yeah,
or something,
I
like,
like that. Off the
you were
leash
not
is true.
trained.
Right. I like off the leash for sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh,
That's
man.
basically what it is.
Mhm. After your first drink, where did it go from there?
It went to, I had the rush,
Mhm.
and then from the rush, once that was an absolute big no, he wasn't gonna give me any more,
Mhm.
um, I went to marijuana. I disagree with people saying marijuana is the gateway drug, because I didn't really feel that was it. I think alcohol was more the
Yeah.
gateway for me, because, marijuana didn't make me feel that far out. I couldn't
Mhm.
forget my issues, but it was just a natural progression. And then when I was 19 is when I realized that you could take pain medicine for fun.
Mhm.
And I think that was at that time I started developing a very serious and heavy addiction to narcotic pain medicines. Um, but again, we didn't know at that time that you could be addicted to those.
Okay.
I just knew you could take it, and it was really amazing.
Was it OxyContin back then, or what
It
was
it was actually, I ended up having some liquid Demerol left over from
Oh,
having a
okay.
tonsil surgery.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, my best friend at the time, he and I just went on a 6-hour road trip, and we just
Mhm.
shared the bottle. And by the
Yeah.
time we got where we were going, which was 6 hours away, we had finished the bottle. And I would be pretty sure to say we were both overdosing because we were real
Yeah.
jittery and not feeling well, and we knew we had gone too far. But the difference between he and I was is that he didn't need it the next day. I was
Mm,
searching for it the next day.
yeah.
Like when I woke up from that, I thought, that's my life. That's it. That's all I want out of life is to feel the way I felt
Wow.
then. And, I was kind of off the
Yeah.
leash, if you would say.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
gone from that moment. That's all I thought about. And it was
Wow.
drinking. Like, so there was never
Mhm.
hardly a time that I was straight because I was
Right.
awkward in my body too.
Right.
And I didn't know, during those times, I was still in the South. I was still going to school. I
Mhm.
started going to college in the South. I was at a religious college.
Wow.
I was around, all of these other girls, all of them always, because I looked like I was awkward in
Mhm.
female clothes and
Yeah.
stuff. And so all the girls always wanted to do makeup and wanted to fix my hair and all these things because I guess they just think they're looking at this ugly duckling, girl and thought that they wanted to
Yeah.
fix her up. But
Right.
for me, it was just mortifying. And so I was having to like pretend to be in this other skin that was just awful. At the same
Yeah.
time, I was attracted to women.
Mhm.
So it was this big perfect storm, 19 and
Yeah.
20 and 21 years old, where, it was like I thought I was going to have to spend my life alone. And all I wanted to do was be in some kind of loving relationship. Needless to say, I had no idea what that looked like. I was constantly trying to feel outside of myself so I didn't have to feel the awkwardness within myself.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I
that's what I
can
was
relate
running
to
from.
that. Yeah. And
I think a
it's
lot of people can, yeah.
yeah, and I mean for me personally, it was just like the race thing
Mm,
because I'm half white, half black, and then the whole adoption thing. And then, like, I grew up in a white town and well, I
well,
didn't fit in with the minority kids and the white kids. It's just like
yeah,
I found myself with the misfits. I found myself with the
yes,
people who were like the outsiders, the outcasts.
yes,
And
yes.
like that's where I felt home. And maybe that wasn't such a good idea, but you
But it
know,
was the,
I
it
felt
was the best.
accepted. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think that's why we make so many trauma bonds while we're in active
Yeah.
addiction because we
Yeah, it's
feel
so
like these
easy.
people get us.
Yeah, yeah,
And I hear what you're saying about that. That's why I share my transition story, my being transgender so much
mhm,
because it's
yeah,
so able to relate. Everyone's looking for their authentic truth.
mm,
Everyone has had that moment where they have felt like, well, I don't belong here and I'm not accepted here. Who am I really within myself? I'll compromise myself to, be with these kids because they at least
mhm,
let me around them. And, it's
yeah,
these things that where we feel for ourselves because we're not taught in our system of society to be authentic. It's
right,
changing now because we are changing in collective consciousness,
yeah,
but it hadn't always been this way.
mm,
And I think that the more we can share these journeys and listen, gender transition is a lot like recovery. I mean, there
yeah,
is there's not a magic shot that you take or
mhm,
hormone or surgery you can have to say I'm transgender and tomorrow be in the body that you want to see. There's
right,
this long period where your body has to change from the inside out and you're awkward and you're greasy and
mm,
everything's changing. And that's the same thing as recovery or
yeah,
anyone's search for their truth. It's awkward,
yeah,
you
I
know?
agree, mhm,
It is. And so we can all relate. We're
yeah.
not that different.
So, it's almost like some people kinda learn how to recover twice,
Mm.
that
Mhm.
double recovery. I never thought of
Yeah.
that, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. It's a recovery and a rediscovery. Like
Yeah,
that rediscovery, I think, is what comes after you learn that you can live without substance. Now
yeah,
we're in the rediscovery time. And that rediscovery is realizing that all those things that you ran away from to get away from yourself, the further you ran away, the more addicted you got, the more depressed you got.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that the answer was always to turn around and come back home to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the rediscovery. And I think that's the
Mhm.
beautiful part when you can learn that, man, I'm really this beautiful being on the inside of me. Like,
Mhm.
for me, there was like this sadness of, I stopped myself from appreciating myself or getting to know myself
Yeah.
because I was trying to fit in so that nobody would see my secret or so that people
Mhm.
would accept me.
Right.
And I denied myself,
Right.
and that was why I was suffering so much, and that was the
Mhm.
sufferer within me, was
Yeah.
the one being ignored. So what
Mhm.
people were doing to me,
You were
I was doing
doing
to
to
myself.
yourself, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hurtful. It's
You're putting
hurtful.
masks on every day,
Yes.
not living your
Yes.
true self, but
Yes.
oh my gosh,
Yes.
like finding your true self and in sobriety, like I
Mm.
just became certified in yoga and
Oh,
like
wow.
that was an amazing journey because, you find yourself, it's a union with yourself but also with others and
That's awesome.
like we all have this light inside of us and it's
Mm.
so sad like, to look back and see yourself when you were like trapped in that darkness and
Yeah.
like if I knew back then that I didn't have to be stuck in the darkness, like there is like this huge awakening and
Yes.
you can see it, you can feel it,
Yeah.
like, it is
Yeah.
awesome. I love it.
Mm.
Like
I
so
do
many more
too.
people are coming into the light like you were
Yes.
saying earlier. Like I love that spiritual awakening or
Mm.
so did
Yes.
you go through a spiritual awakening?
I did. I did. I really did. I would say it hit me really hard about 4 years ago because before I started going through my transition, I had already begun to speak out and share about recovery. And I was doing that and had developed a very large platform and a very large following. And I was talking to people about healing your root causes. Like that was my whole spiel. Like if you don't heal the shit that's underneath the using, then
Mhm.
you're always going to be just holding back, using. And
Yeah.
that gets tiring and that's why we relapse. We can't hold back,
Yeah.
something with all our strength and not do anything to fix that. And so I had done a lot of work with working through my trauma and working through a lot of that. And I got to that last thing and it wouldn't let me go. And that was my
Mhm.
transition. And I wanted to work through all of that stuff before because I wanted to be sure that I was not identifying as trans or something else because of my abuse. I
Right.
wanted to make sure that that was that. And
Mhm.
I had never planned to transition. And plus, I was 44 years old at the time. It was like, I'm way too old. This is not going to happen. I saw Caitlyn Jenner come out, and even when I
Mhm.
saw Chaz Bono go through his transition in the 90s or early 2000s, I was really pissed off because internally I knew I would never get to do that. But when I saw Caitlyn Jenner come out, and I thought, what a an effing warrior
Yeah.
to be the biggest male figure in
Right.
the world and come out and say, this is who I truly am,
Yeah.
and do it like that. And I thought that begged to me, it's like, if this person can step into their truth, what's
Mhm.
your problem? And, our son was graduating high school, and, I thought, I don't have any more excuses to not become who I truly am. I had a supportive wife. I had a supportive family. I had no excuse other than I didn't have the money and I didn't have insurance. The same gremlins that were before. But when I started the transition, I had learned to accept myself as a gay person in like the ministry. I identified as a Christian. I call it dopamine Jesus Christian
Mhm.
because we can, that'll be a whole nother show we could do together.
Okay.
I think a lot of new recovery people drop into that dopamine Jesus thing and they don't
Yeah,
realize it.
I totally did.
Yeah, I did too. We all did. Like, like
Yeah.
I try not to be even be angry with myself because it helped
Mhm.
me get to here because it
Yeah.
caused me to ask the bigger question. And that was the thing. And that's where this awakening began because all of a sudden there was no spot for me.
Mm.
Like, people did not accept me. They accepted me more in that world as a lesbian than they did as
Mm.
a trans person. And
Wow.
I just kept and they kept attacking me with scripture, which just
Mm.
kills me because
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. But I asked the question. I said, well, I need to know because I know that I was born this way. I know that there's a purpose. I know that I was led into this moment that I'm going through now, this transition. I need to know God on the truth. I want to know the truth. And it was opening that question that became the most daunting,
Yeah.
scariest, and most fulfilling question of my
Mhm.
life because everything that I had built, like we don't even know what we are absorbing about religion
Yeah.
until we start asking questions and having all those old wrong belief systems basically torn down. You
Mhm.
don't realize how much security you've built on them.
Yeah.
And you're like, everything that started getting shaken up in my world, I was like, wait a minute, that's not what
Mhm.
they told me. And
Right.
that's not what they told me. But I knew I was being drawn in truth because I was living that, it was living that. I couldn't argue it because I was living it. And so coming to understand who I am as, a divine being
Mhm.
and what I've truly been given as empowerment and how much of my suffering I was choosing versus making a different choice, how much I was creating my own reality. All these things were hard to swallow, but it can't work if we never swallow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The pill doesn't work sitting on the counter and you're
Yeah.
looking at it. The
Mhm.
pill only works when you swallow and when you begin to put this stuff into action. And so my spiritual awakening has been an amazing gift.
Mhm.
I live today with more truth and love for myself and others than I ever have.
Mhm.
I choose peace. I may not always get out in front of it enough to choose it in the moment,
Yeah.
but I'm
That's
always
human. I think
aware.
that's human.
Absolutely. And you know what I think the scariest part of the awakening process is you can go over to dopamine spiritual awakening too.
Yeah.
Like we can go that whole other side
Oh yeah.
and be into that toxic positivity mindset as
Mhm.
well that we forget that, we only know light because there's darkness, and we
Yeah.
only know darkness
Yeah.
because of the white. It's like the yin and the
Mhm.
yang.
It
If you
is.
take the
Yeah.
dark away,
Mhm.
the white disappears,
Yeah.
the
You
light
do need
disappears.
both.
You
Yeah.
gotta have both.
Yeah.
And I think that
And that's a part of each and every one of us. It's the light
absolutely,
and the dark. It's
yes,
just whatever
yes.
you give more power to. Yeah.
Yes, that is the absolute wonderful truth.
Mhm.
And if you think that there's not a wounded toddler still living in you, and if
Mhm.
you think there's not a wounded 11, 12-year old living in you, and a wounded early teens, early
Mhm.
20s living in you, however old you are, you're wrong. Like we have to learn to love all of those parts of us,
Yeah.
not pretend they're not there or wish them away or
Mhm.
shove them out of the picture because
Right.
those are the triggers that are coming back up in your life every day of your recovery, begging to be seen.
Mhm.
Triggers really aren't there to make us want to use, they're there to get our attention of something that needs to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And
And
that
that's
is
what
a
our
big
body
truth.
does. Yeah.
Yes, it
It's like when
does.
we're in pain or when we get sick, it's the body telling us something needs
Yes.
to be healed.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And
And
I
you
think
as a
for the
yoga
longest
instructor know that.
time, yeah, and for the longest time, I feel like maybe our minds and our bodies were doing that for us or telling us in
Yeah.
a way, but we were just like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
ran
No, I
from
don't want to feel
that.
that.
No.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, we live in a society, man, that just
Ugh,
everything is built for our ease. If
yeah.
you look at every new car that comes out, it's built with brand new bells and whistles
Oh
to
yeah.
make things easy for you, almost to the point now where we don't even have to park the freaking car by
Oh
ourselves
my
anymore.
gosh. Yeah.
It's like,
Everything is done for
everything.
us. Like
Yes,
how are we supposed to learn? How is anyone gonna learn that way?
absolutely. Like
Gotta
it's
do the work.
not. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to do the work, and the fulfillment is honestly within that journey. I thought that was cliche when people would say that to me in new recovery, because I was so used to escaping the journey. Like the journey was not anything I wanted to be a part of.
Right.
And now, even on the worst days that I have, there's always something to be learned from it. And and so much of it is about choice, like, and learning. This was a big thing, learning how much my energy and thoughts mattered, because when I started my recovery journey 8 years ago, that's where I started in my mind, because I knew my
Yeah.
thoughts were just gross, like
Oh
I knew they
yeah.
were wildly just awful,
Mhm.
and I
Thoughts
knew
are
I had to start
toxic.
there.
Toxic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very,
Mhm.
very. And I knew that, I mean, that's how we see the world, how we think
Mhm.
about the world actually designs what we see in the
Yeah.
world. And that's pretty scary if you're not paying attention to your thoughts. You think you're the
Yeah.
victim of it. Like this is
Oh yeah.
happening to me,
Yeah.
when it's not, it's
Mhm.
happening through me,
Yeah,
whatever I'm
that's so
focused
true.
on, it is.
Mhm.
We we go through things, and it's so wild to me because we go through things like relationships. This is like the biggest one. And people say, why do I keep attracting the same kind of asshole?
Yeah.
There it is. Like
Because you're
like
putting that same type of energy out there. It's just gonna keep
absolutely.
coming back. It's a
Every time.
cycle.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. The
You have to
packaging
change
may
that
be different.
cycle.
And to do
Mhm.
that's to become aware of it. I love people in
Mhm.
new recovery that are beginning to become aware, because
Mhm.
you're on your way. Like when
Right.
you start to become aware, I know it feels like shit.
Mhm. Those aha moments, though,
Yeah,
are so good.
yeah,
I
because you're on your way.
remember, so in early recovery, the thought process, I totally had to change that.
Oh, yeah,
Number one, and that is one of the things that truly helped me. Changing
yeah,
your thought process every day. And, I asked my higher power to take those anxieties and worries away, and something worked, but it was the change of your thought
yeah,
process. Being
yeah,
grateful, just not dwelling on the past and the future, like the just for today reading today. Yeah,
yeah.
just living in the moment, taking it one step, one day at a time.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I remember hearing this profound statement and having this moment where I don't remember who said it or where I read it, but it said, anxiety is living too far in the future, and
Mhm.
depression is living too far in the past.
Yeah.
So, like, just hearing something like that gave me a beautiful gauge to, come back into my body in those moments where I realize, oh my gosh, my anxiety is out of the control. Because by the time we notice it, it's
Mhm.
already in the red zone. And I remember being in this anger management class, because I was an exploder, man. I
Mhm.
0 to 1,000 in milliseconds. And I remember the teacher, he was saying, you got to start getting out in front of it, when you feel it in your body, or when you feel it starting to, build. And I'm like, but I don't feel it build. I mean, like I go, and he's like, that's a lie. That's a lie. He said,
Mhm.
it's building in your body. You just aren't used to becoming aware of it.
Mhm.
And I asked him, I said, so when do you step away? Like, when do you stop it? And he pointed to his body, he pointed to his stomach. He said, when my anger gets to right here,
Mhm.
he said, I make a different choice. And that was profound to me because it gave me that moment to become aware. It was little things like that that became these big moments. And so now when I started getting used to that, I was still having these exploding anger things, but in the process of it, I
Mhm.
was becoming aware. Okay, like where did I feel that? Where's it
Yeah.
coming from? At what momentum can I not stop it now? When has it already started to roll down the hill? I
Mhm.
like what Abraham Hicks always says, is if you push a boulder off of a
Mhm.
cliff, you can't get to the middle of the cliff or the middle of the fall and say, nope, stop.
Right.
I want to go a different way. A
Mhm.
lot of times when we get in that moment, we just got to let it play out, but we
Mhm.
can still go back and study it and find out how we can, work it out in a more healthy way
Mhm.
before. So now
Yeah.
when I start to feel anxious, I notice it in my body. I pay attention
Mhm.
to my thoughts.
Yeah,
Every
being
time,
aware.
yes, every time I
Like,
find
we can be
myself
aware
thinking
now
something.
in
Yeah,
sobriety.
I
We don't
know.
have to be unaware.
Right?
Oh my
We're not
gosh.
we're fighting to be aware instead of fighting to be completely
Ugh,
unaware.
it's a
It's
beautiful
it's
thing.
it is. It really is. And I
It
know
reminds
that
me
we
of, like, the chakras or
yes.
anything like that, when there's a disruption
Yes.
in certain areas, it's telling you, like, you need to heal this area, you need to
Yes.
heal that part of yourself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what is making that area, like, so, I don't know, just, like, disrupted?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what's
I
happening
didn't
there?
know how much being aware of your body, mind, spirit, all of it goes into your recovery.
Oh my gosh. It's
It's
the
a lot,
way
but
it is. It's a lot, but it's so much more. That's why it's so
yeah.
much more. When I see
Mhm.
people like you and so many amazing young human beings and human beings in general coming into
Yeah.
this new place of recovery where they're realizing that this is a mind-body connection and a spiritual
Yeah.
connection, it makes me so proud because when I began doing this for almost 5 years ago, these were the things I was dreaming about
Yeah.
watching the world grasp
Yeah.
and just knowing that it's happening is a huge, huge like heart filler for me. Like it
Mhm.
fills me to the point that, I think this is it, man. Like this is what it was all for.
Yeah.
And to see people coming out the gate, they're getting clean and they're going right into, getting it in
Yeah.
ways that just wasn't
You
possible.
didn't see that before.
No, no. In
Mhm.
fact, somebody says get sober, and you're like, for what? To be an
Right.
old chain smoker drinking 15
Mhm.
cups of coffee in a meeting and
Mm.
talking about wartime? Like it did not show anybody not just
Mhm.
being a dry addict. And I was not going to be a dry addict anymore. Like I just refused to be that addict without my drugs. I just was not going to
Right.
be that angry person. So this was the only way it was going to work if I figured out something else.
Yeah.
Deeper truth, daily loving me, coming home to
Daily
myself.
maintenance, yeah.
Yes, yes, that's
Mhm.
all what that is exactly is maintenance.
Yeah.
Like I got this sobriety. How do I learn to
Yeah.
operate in a life where there will come a time when using will not cross my mind?
Right.
Where my first thought or 15th, 100th thought will not be, well, I wish I could take a drink right now, or I wish I could pick up.
Mm.
And I guess that's the hope that you want to give somebody just brand new sober is that if you work on yourself, then eventually you will not be the gazelle just lying in wait to be attacked by the lion of relapse.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that I can ever say to somebody is
Yeah.
that life is no fun. That sober life where you're just always looking over your shoulder to see
Right.
if relapse is sitting there to
Mm.
get you when things get rough.
Yeah.
I don't like the example of, well, your addiction's out in the parking lot doing push-ups and it's
Mm.
waiting on you, and it's just like, let's drop some of the fear
Yeah.
and let's teach people how to love themselves, love their triggers for the information that they're giving them.
Mhm.
Let's teach them how to study themselves
Yeah.
and create a recovery program that is not necessarily external to them. Like some of that needs to happen. You got to have your
Yeah.
support groups. You got to have
We
your stuff.
do.
You got to have other people. But there's a lot of things that you need to do within you that's going to happen when nobody else is around.
Mhm.
If you
Yeah,
put
no
all
one
your
else can do it for
dependence,
you.
no, they can't. They
Yeah.
can. And whatever avenue you find,
Mhm.
you don't have to just go to one thing. Like if you do NA or AA,
Right.
that you don't have to just do that. Like do other things too.
I feel like you can't
S-
just do that.
You can't. You're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
and not everybody agrees with AA or NA or
Right.
religion or wherever they find their recovery. I mean, I've
Right.
talked to people who do it on their own, and I'm like, what? How? But
That's
yeah,
how
there's
I was.
so many different ways.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of the ways that you stopped using?
I used medication assisted treatment whenever I first started coming off of the opiates because I knew I was not going to be able to work on my traumas, my head, and my heart if my body was still trying to kick. It wasn't going to happen because no matter how willful you are in your mind, when your body's sick about that third day, your body's going to overtake your mind, and we're back out to get the instant, fix of all that. So I found a program in my area that was very strict. I wanted that program that was going to hold me accountable, that had rules. I went for the program that everybody said, don't go to that program. Like, don't go to
Mhm.
Coastal Horizons because
Yeah.
they got too many rules. And I was like, that's where I'm
Mhm.
going. And I made an agreement with myself before I went in because I had some experience with it in the past and I'd had some success with it in the past. I had just never gone within. I
Right.
said, I'm only going to go a certain milligram. I will not go any higher.
Mhm.
You're not going to make me go any higher. I got enough information within me to know that anything over this milligram right here ain't even really helping me. That's when you start to make me more dependent
Okay.
on you as a program. So this is where I'm going to stay. They had a lot of different programs. So they had rape counseling and they had anger management, and
Mhm.
I took them all.
Yeah.
Like I wanted everything they had. I made my counselors counsel me. I didn't let them do
Right.
just come in 30 minutes to
Yeah.
fill your quota and go.
Mhm.
Nope. I laid it all out when I went and I was like, I want help. I'm going to trust you to help me. And if you don't help me, I'll find somebody that will. But I got to be done with this shit. Like I'm going to die if I don't. And I've decided I don't want to die today. So
Mhm.
that's where it is. I just became relentless. I took everything that I could possibly take to begin. I really started diving into my mind. I used podcasts, I used YouTube like crazy. I was a graduate of the University of YouTube,
Mhm.
always studying my mind, learning that, the power of my mind was absolutely pinnacle and at work. And I did get into a bit of the religious part there early. Then I got a vision for what what is now, which I love, which is now the sober app. Like I had this
Yeah.
vision for this resource, this platform
Mhm.
that would be a place that people could always have some type of recovery available to them
Yeah.
at 2 a.m. when there were no meetings, there was nobody, and they needed something. So I started speaking online. I had started being asked to speak in the community in our state for our country, our U.S. Attorney General. I mean, I started doing a lot of
Wow.
things that started making me understand that I was built for more than just to be a junkie, which is what I believed about
Yeah.
myself. I really began to give back. I did not do 12 step this time because they weren't very welcoming to people on MAT at the time. And I'm grateful that a lot of that has changed. Maybe hasn't completely changed,
Right.
but it's changed some. So I had a lot of white knuckling times. A lot of times that I barely stayed sober. My wife relapsed on heroin the first year that I got sober, was trying to get sober. It was wild. But I
Mhm.
had a lot of accountability. I put a lot on my
Mhm.
shoulders
Yeah.
and I didn't want to lose it. That program I was in had a housing program.
Mhm.
So my wife, my son, and I got to move out of my mom's house, which is where we
Okay.
were staying for a little while. That was very toxic. We moved into our own place, and everything was riding on me. So my failure in my recovery meant homelessness, losing our son, losing my family. I mean, it meant
Mhm.
so much that I just, by any means necessary,
Yeah.
and I was ready.
I mean, that's a lot of weight
Podcast,
to carry.
it was a lot. It was a
Mhm.
lot, and some days I'm surprised I'm here,
Yeah.
honestly, because some days it was just too much. But, you know, coming into that awakening was probably what really saved me in all that, is learning
Yeah.
how much my thoughts and my energy had to do with my experience.
Yeah.
And
I
that
so
was
agree with
huge.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Huge.
What kind of support do you have in your life surrounding your recovery today?
Oh
Or
man.
do you, a lot of support?
I have a lot of beautiful, like, I get a lot of support online.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily a social butterfly. I guess nobody is at this point with all the COVID crap still happening. Um, but I really am a bit of a hermit, but I find a lot of support online. I just really
Yeah.
do. Meeting
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
and meeting so many people, with Curtis and Danny and
Yeah.
Dora Goslin, who I'm gonna be interviewing tonight, Kim
Hmm.
Bellis, I have a great friend named Pamela Topjian who's not in recovery herself, but
Hmm.
has a son that's in recovery. And
Yeah.
and I have just come to appreciate that connection with other human beings at this point that are of like hearts and different things. And
Yeah.
that's what I do a lot. And I stay in consistent, I guess, pursuit of my deeper truth
Yeah.
and my highest self. And so I'm always looking to be more free in every day. So I think that's a big part of my recovery. I
Yeah.
don't at 8 years, I'm so grateful not to have to work on the urge to use anymore, but I'm still in pursuit of making sure that I'm continuing to be, my highest
Yeah.
and best, most divine self. And that
Mhm.
really, deeper truth, really, that's my jam, man. I just
Yeah.
love it. And I always like uncovering things. One of my greatest resources is my great friend Martin John Garcia, and he has a beautiful podcast called Recover Yourself.
Okay.
And he's now part of the Sober app too. And
Okay.
he's like he's my spiritual brother. And he always asks me these deeper questions about identity and being careful not to identify with
Mm.
certain labels and how to live beyond the labels.
Yeah.
And he does a workshop that's basically helps you identify the stories that you're living under.
Oh.
For anything that we encounter in life, no matter what it brings up, especially if it
Yeah.
brings up a negative feeling,
Hmm.
if we can identify the story that we're
Yeah.
telling ourselves about that and what that deeper underneath emotional, part of us that we're trying to get met
Yeah.
there,
Hmm.
we can really free ourselves.
Yeah.
I think the goal is true freedom
Hmm.
and true to stand up and think that to look around in our world while we pay taxes and we buy groceries from the store and all that stuff, to say we're free
Hmm.
is almost a laughable thing because we're not
Right.
necessarily free. We're
Yeah.
still dependent. But
But you can be free from what
you're
is inside
right.
you that is holding you
Yes.
down and keeping you stuck. And
That's
there's
it.
so much
Yes.
like that. That
Yes.
sounds like hypnotherapy
Oh my
almost. Like
gosh.
my
Yes.
I had a sober author, Rebecca, on. She
Hmm.
was explaining about hypnotherapy, and
Yes. I
she's gonna
use
do it
that
for
too.
me, and it's amazing. I've never tried it,
Mm.
but I'm like, wow, like you can
Oh, it's
really
amazing.
unlock things from your
Yes.
past and change.
Oh my gosh. It's
Yeah.
outstanding and I'm so
Okay.
grateful to hear you, and I forgot
Yeah.
that that's actually a huge part of my
Okay.
recovery. My friend Pamela Topjian is
Oh.
the founder of Breakthrough Hypnotherapy, and we did so much work together. And I sleep with hypnotherapy every night.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a mask with Bluetooth in it, and every
Oh.
night I play,
Mhm.
certain hypnosis, and then
Mhm.
behind that these affirmations roll behind my
Oh.
in the background, because your subconscious is what's really driving our everyday experience, and that's where we have to change. Beautiful thing about hypnotherapy is it calms your conscious, your monkey mind, if you
Yeah,
will,
I
and then
love that.
speaks directly to that
Ah,
subconscious.
I
So I'm
can't wait.
excited for
I'm
you.
excited.
I'm
Yeah.
super excited for you. It's going to
Can't wait.
be
I feel
really,
like it's
really
gonna
awesome.
be life changing.
It
I feel
is.
like
It
I
is.
needed that like
It
forever.
is.
Where were you?
I love it. I
Yeah.
love that. Keep me posted on
Yeah,
how it goes too.
I
I can't wait.
definitely will.
I can't wait.
What are some of the ways that you stay sober every day?
Every day, I keep on the guard of my mind and my energy. I guard myself. Like, I just don't let any random thing be playing in the background of my life. I try to be very mindful about the people that I allow in my, reality. Not that people are bad, but I have to guard that in myself. My life depends upon it. Um,
It's not that
I
people are bad, but
They're
there's
not.
some people that, you need distance from.
Yes,
You
yes,
learn
your
that
energies don't
eventually, but
match.
yeah.
Yeah, your energies don't match, and you have to
Mhm.
learn about boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundaries aren't mean. We have the
Yeah.
tendency from a victim mindset to think that
Mhm.
boundaries mean you have to be mean to people.
Yeah.
That's not true. You've got to love yourself enough to stand guard, at the door of your mind. So I really do a lot of mind work and try to just make sure that I'm staying in control of what as much as I can of what I allow into my experience. I try to connect, even if it's just a message or an emoji on Instagram or something a day with somebody that I have just such a connection with. I can just look at their picture
Mhm.
and just kind of feel that connection.
Yeah.
Gratitude is a huge part of my life. It's the my daily practice. I spend at least 15 minutes in the beginning of my day just completely immersed in that deeper level of gratitude. Not the kind where you just make a list, but the
Yeah.
kind where you feel and you connect with that piece of
Mhm.
gratitude.
Like a
Um,
meditation almost.
yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I do stay active. I have a very active physical job, so I'm staying active. And I found that especially in early recovery, when I exhausted my energy throughout the day, and I was really tired when I came home, it made it a lot easier for me just to relax and go to sleep and not want to get out and try to find and use and so I was just tired.
Mhm.
I created what I call my recovery battle plan, and it has changed over the years. And basically, in early recovery, your battle plan has to be all the way down to how are you going to drive to work? Like,
Mhm.
study yourself. Is your route to work going right by the dope dealer's house? Is this the same route you would take every morning so you could stop by, get a fix before work? And,
Mhm.
we got to change the little things
Yeah.
because those are the subconscious things that are giving us a lot of triggers. Your body reacting to you taking that route to work, or driving that way to work, your
Yeah.
subconscious will begin to say, wait a minute, body, body, body,
Mhm.
we were supposed to use now, body, body,
Yeah.
and flood
Yeah.
you.
It's like removing these habits,
Yeah,
habitual things in your
yeah,
everyday
for
life. I
sure.
mean,
Yeah.
it reminds me
Ease
of
your own
quitting
suffering.
smoking. Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
I'm going
all
through
these
that now.
habits that we went through. Like, I
Yeah.
never realized how ritualistic like
Mm.
smoking was until I quit, and I was like, wow, that's. Uh,
I'm realizing that right now. Like
yeah.
in order for me to be successful at this, everything's gonna have to change. Like I'm gonna have to make a new battle plan, and it's gonna
Yeah.
have to look like new recovery. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to do things different. Wake up at a different time. Drink
Mhm.
my coffee in a different
Yeah.
place. Like there's all these
Mhm.
things. If a person can learn to study themselves, they can develop an amazing battle plan for themselves to get out in front of it. Don't wait till you're in the middle of the
Yeah.
trigger to start trying to fight out of it. Try to make a plan before. And that's just what I do with every day. I don't like to get in conflicts with people. I don't like to be around a bunch of negative energy. So I make that a part of my battle plan.
Yeah.
I live by that every day.
What message or life lesson have you learned from your own recovery that you can
Oh,
share with
man.
others? I mean, there's probably a lot because there is a
Yeah.
lot in general.
There's a lot, but the tagline that I live by and always tell people is to get up from their give up and create a life that they love because you are the creator of your own reality. I know it's hard to swallow that, but it's true. We are creating in all moments our own
Mhm.
experience of the world, and that no matter where you feel like you are in the world, if you can just grab a hold to an inkling of hope, then you can build on that. And if you don't think you can, then just take a moment to sit where you are and come out of that place where you're victimized and just sit where you are for a moment
Mhm.
and realize that even getting the opportunity to wake up and breathe in and out
Yeah.
is a nugget of hope. Because if I'm
Mhm.
breathing, I can work on this and I can change. And so you can do this by making that decision you just have to learn about that. Like, learn how powerful you truly are. Forgiveness is a huge deal. The moment that I realized this was one of the most life changing moments in my early
Mhm.
recovery is realizing that when I replay these traumatic things that happened to me over and over in my mind, I'm allowing those people to
Yeah.
abuse me all over again.
Yeah.
That my body and my brain is releasing the same chemicals, that it is going into the same, like fight or flight
Mhm.
mode, and that over a prolonged amount of time living like that, it is damaging my body and my brain, not to mention my spirit, but
Yeah.
it is absolutely damaging my body, it's damaging my brain, and it's causing me to live in the world on guard, a victim, and just waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I think a lot of people that are just coming out of active addiction or
Yeah.
still in active addiction are living like that because they have to be on guard. When you're moving in those
Yeah.
circles, you are living in a war zone. And so
Mhm.
you
It's like
feel
that
that way. Yeah,
obsession that
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so glad I don't feel that
Me too.
obsession or
Oh my
obsessive
gosh.
thoughts anymore. Like that
Yes,
was so
yes.
hard, and that was such a big part of what kept me trapped. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was like a full-time
Wow.
job,
Like
that
how different we feel right
I know.
now from then. It's
I know.
crazy.
And if nothing gives your
Yeah.
listener hope, let
Yeah.
that be the hope you
Right.
hang on to today, because you're listening to two people right now that both
Yeah.
knew that we were down and out,
Mhm.
like felt hopeless, and we both found a ray of hope, even the
Yeah.
slightest bit to build on. And if
Mhm.
you stay, relentless with it, just every day. I got really curious about what my purpose in this life was, because I
Same.
survived and many of my friends
Yeah.
didn't. And
Mhm.
so get curious about that.
Mhm.
Purpose will help pull you through on days that you
Yeah.
just don't want to get out of bed. I can already imagine this podcast has probably pulled you through,
Yeah.
certain times that you just didn't want to deal with
Mhm.
anything. And the fact
Yeah.
that you have something to share and that you feel like this is your upper calling and stuff,
Mhm.
that purpose will pull you through regardless of what it is.
Yeah.
So
And it
get in
keeps me
search of that.
accountable, you know?
Absolutely.
I never thought I would be on the
Absolutely.
sober app, or I never thought I would
Right.
be interviewing anyone else. Like I
Right.
thought I just started as my own thing where I could just discuss stuff I've been
Yep.
through. The recovery scene online is so beautiful,
It
and
is.
everyone I'm meeting, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my heart's so warm." And I
Yeah.
never knew there was like all this
I know.
community online. And
Absolutely. And
yes.
what a beautiful mirror that you're meeting people with hearts that
Yeah.
just fill you up with gratitude, because they're
Yeah.
mirroring your heart.
Yeah.
That's mirroring your energy back to you.
Mhm.
I say to people right now, if you want to know how you're vibrating, look
Yeah.
at the people in your life.
Yes.
If everybody has that same kind of vibe, that's your vibe too.
Yeah.
And in order to find a new tribe, you got to change your vibe.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you can do that by choosing
Mhm.
different. I had to change the music I listened to, man. Like when I tell
Yeah.
you that I got rid of as many triggers
Mhm.
as I could, I
Yeah.
did, man.
I feel
Because
that. Yeah.
I had
Mhm.
to, man. I did not want to
Yeah.
suffer for suffering's sake.
Yeah.
I was gonna suffer on my own anyway. I had a lot of shit to deal with, but
Mhm.
I didn't want to add extra to it, to the
Yeah.
point that I was just so exhausted that I wasn't going to be able to hold that dam back
Mhm.
anymore. We can only be so strong physically. You can hold this light cup up for
Mhm.
however long, but eventually your arm's going to get tired and you're going to
Yeah.
drop this thing. You add a bunch of weight to this thing and it's going to take even less time before it's dropped. And then you're going to spill a mess. And then there's
Mhm.
no reason for you to be the one putting weight in here.
Right.
Like drop some of it.
Mhm.
Realize that forgiveness is not for somebody else,
Mhm.
it's for you. It's not excuse.
Yeah.
It just means that they're not thinking about you. But
So
you when
important.
yeah, when you think about them, they're abusing you all over again. So you might as well be five. You might as
Yeah.
well. And that is the moment where you got to say, I get it, man.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
if I don't let this go and I don't release them, I ain't got to make a phone call and say, "Oh, thank you for sexually abusing me. It was so fun," or "I forgive you." That's not what it's about. It's
Mhm.
about hey man, I'm sorry this happened to you. And we're acknowledging that it did happen to you. And I love you. And we're going to release this stuff and this person because you don't deserve to get sexually molested every
Right.
day of your life at age 40. Like enough's enough already.
Mhm.
You've been abused like that every single day. So
Yeah.
man, I love you and let's move through this
Mhm.
because if you walked into a room and you saw a 5-year-old sitting there that had just been molested,
Mm.
what would you say to that
Yeah.
5-year-old? What would you do? Like you would wrap your arms around that 5 year
Yeah.
old and you would scoop them up and you'd
Mhm.
take them out of there and you would cry with them and
Yeah.
you would hold them and you would tell them it's going to be okay. So, why do you try to shut the 5-year old in you up?
Mhm.
You wouldn't do that. And so, don't do it to you because that
Yeah.
little kid's still living in you, regardless of what it is.
Mhm.
That's why that forgiveness is so important. It's for that little
Yeah.
kid, it's not for
Yeah.
that other person.
And I
It'll
love
free you.
that,
It'll free you.
that's a yeah, it's so freeing, the freedom
Mm,
you get from
yes.
releasing all that.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And I like how you put that, talking about like how we have our younger selves in us, or,
Mm-hmm.
us at different ages, and that helps to kind of break it down and see how you have to heal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're all a part
Mhm.
of you. Like, I
Yeah.
can't be this Elsie today
Without.
without
Mhm.
all those parts of me. And
Yeah.
I want to give all of them their turn at the mic. You know, every one of them their turn with happiness. They deserve that.
Mhm.
I keep living for them and I keep going for them.
Yeah.
And they're amazing.
Let it hurt, let it heal, then let it go. And I
Yes.
did a podcast episode on it. Yeah.
It's true.
A lot of
You gotta,
hurt, and then we come to healing, and then we have to learn to let it go, and none of
yeah.
that's easy.
Yeah. Yeah. It leaves so much more room inside of you to experience good. When we block
Mhm.
ourselves out from all the bad or what we think is going to hurt us, we're
Yeah.
blocking ourselves out for the good. I mean, you can't build a wall that doesn't stop everything. It
Yeah.
doesn't, there's not like this two-way wall, you know, where you can
Mhm.
stop bad and let in good. And when you change your relationship to what's actually bad, when you change yourself from judging that
Yeah.
something's bad or good or that you're bad or good and just accept that this is what is right now and I can grow through this too. Like I don't have to just go through it to go through it. I can grow through this.
Yeah. Grow
It's
through it.
yeah, the hurt comes in the
Mhm.
wishing it were different. You know,
Yeah.
the suffering comes in wishing that this
Mhm.
were different. How many of
Yeah.
us carry around these feelings of
Yeah.
abuse?
Yeah.
And the suffering's not always about the abuse, it's about
Mhm.
wishing it didn't happen or
Mhm.
wishing it could have been different. And
Yeah.
really, we
I
have to
mean, there's
accept that it
in
is.
Buddhism, the saying is that like everything is suffering, everything in the
Yeah,
world is suffering. There's a way to kind of come back from to yourself, and you learn that suffering's okay, but learn how to like master it. And
yeah, yeah,
it's yeah.
yeah. It's not easy. You know, we
Oh,
have beautiful
nothing's easy.
conversations, but you're right.
Mhm.
It's not. And nothing worth having or keeping is ever
Yeah.
comes easy anyway.
Mhm.
And you'll fight for this. When you do
Yeah.
this kind of work that we're talking about and what you've done and what I've done, I'll fight for this, man. Like, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it to me. I
Oh
never want
yeah.
to go back.
Me neither.
Never.
I don't think I can. Like, I mean,
Uh-uh.
we could, because we're always recovering, and I'll believe that forever. I'm not recovered. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm always a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would, it's just sad to me when people are stuck in that darkness, stuck in that
Yeah.
addiction, and
Yes.
can't see a way out. And it's
Yeah.
frustrating, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah. You
I
hope that
wouldn't
they
want
will.
anyone to feel what I felt before.
Yes. Oh my
I hate
gosh.
the darkness. I hate it.
I know. Even though we have that darkness and stuff in us and we got to find the balance, I think the what
Yeah.
we hate so much was living in the constant darkness.
Yeah.
Like never getting the rays of light or
Yeah.
when we would see the light it would be on somebody else and it's like
Yeah.
that's not available to me. And
Mhm.
when we realize that what's available for one is available for us too, we just may
Mhm.
have to take a different route to get it.
Right.
And once we realize that to have survived active addiction and to be in recovery, you're actually blessed
Yeah.
because you're in a place where you get to awaken to your greatness, your divinity far quicker than somebody who you think has had all the breaks that live in the perfect house or what we
Right.
think is the perfect house with the perfect life and the perfect childhood and all
Mhm.
of these things. They're not going to awaken as deeply and as fast as you will, because you have the contrast of what you really don't like so that you know what you like, and you can accept nothing less, because our lives depend on this.
Right.
They don't have anything that heavy standing right here pushing them forward. We
Right.
do. We may not have, like, I know for me, I don't have another relapse. Like, I won't get to
Yeah.
come back from the other one.
Right.
Like, one more, I won't get to come back, and I know that.
Mm-hmm.
So having that knowledge allows me to walk throughout the day
Yeah.
and keep moving forward, because the alternative,
Isn't good. No.
no,
Yeah.
not at all.
Like, this is the chance that I got to make it right.
Yes. Yes.
That
Yes.
last chance. Like, and how
That's
many
it.
chances have we had?
Right. Oh my gosh.
uh,
Like, I'm out of chances. Like, there's no way
Same.
I got another one left.
God spoke to me or something, and
Yep.
it's like, get your shit together.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
okay. Uh,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
yeah. What are you most grateful for today? The
Oh
most
man.
grateful. I know
Mm.
there's a lot of gratefulness.
I'm grateful for deeper truth. I'm grateful to know that I have access to a deeper truth
Yeah.
in the world. I am grateful to be part of the awakened. I'm grateful to be continuously awakening. I'm grateful to be alive on earth in this moment, because it's a challenging yet amazing time to be alive and watch the collective awaken. I'm truly grateful for my wife, man. I have a wife that has stuck with me through, I mean, doctors giving me a 6-month diagnosis. I'll be dead in 6 months. I mean, this woman has walked through fire with me, and we've walked through fire together. And we are an example that a using relationship can work if you work on making it healthy and you work on yourselves individually. I have a great family. I I'm just so grateful to know that I have a choice today of how I make my day. Like, I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the knowledge that I have about my energy and my thoughts, and even law of attraction. I even hate saying that, because it's so overused right now, but I'm grateful to know the deeper truth of how that works.
What you put
Mm.
out, you get back.
Absolutely. Bad or good, whatever,
Yeah.
negative or positive. I'm just grateful to have an amazing online recovery family. I'm grateful to have an amazing online recovery platform. I'm grateful for so much. Like, we could probably sit here for the next 12 hours and
Yeah.
I could not reach
Yeah,
the end of
that's so
my list.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's
Mhm.
a great question, and
Yeah.
it's a great thought. It's a great, like, thought prompting to ask. I
But
like this.
gratefulness is in our lives every day.
Yes,
No, we can't
yes.
forget that.
No, and it's a choice. It's a choice. We
Yeah.
can choose. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I'm looking forward to having you on the
Yeah,
podcast too,
same.
coming up, because I'm really,
Yeah.
really, really want to dive into your story
Yeah.
of, I think that a lot of children that have been adopted
Mhm.
have these hidden feelings within, and
Yeah.
I think that we don't talk about it enough and pay enough attention. So,
Yeah.
I'm grateful to have really made a good connection with you, and I am so thankful for what you're doing.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
when you
Yeah.
do this, it means something to people like me, that are kind of, call us dinosaurs, that began this online thing, quite a few years ago, and now get to see the results of it. And it's just a beautiful knowing that it's worth it. And
Yeah.
so that's all I
Well,
want to
thank
leave
you.
you
Thank you
with.
all for being inspiring, because without that, there wouldn't be the platform for us to.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well,
I
thank you
love it.
so much,
Yeah, thank
Elsie.
you.
You're
Thank you.
amazing. And
You
yeah.
are too. I
I'll talk
appreciate
to
you.
you soon.
All right. Sounds
All
good.
right. Have a blessed
Bye.
evening. Bye.
You too. Bye.